Hi, everyone. Welcome to this interview by Core Recruitment. Thank you very much for joining us today. Core Recruitment, as you might be aware, is an international recruitment agency, and we specialize in mid to senior level appointments across non-exec and executive hiring. Now, we're running this interview series to inject some positivity into the marketplace, and we are very fortunate to be meeting up with some exceptional business leaders, founders, and game changers. All of these interviews and articles that we're recording can all be viewed on our website, www.corerecruitment.com, if you want to view them or share them with loved ones to motivate them as well. Now, I'm going to introduce Matthew, who is the UK Business Awards CEO of the Year 2025. Matt, that's quite an accolade, right?
That's an accolade. I wasn't expecting you to start with that. But some people just call me Matt. I'm just some guy from Bradford. But yeah, I did pick up that award last year, and I'm very proud
Excellent.
of it.
I mean, were you expecting that? I mean, does anyone expect that? How did you find out about that?
I wasn't, and it took me a bit aback. And when we talk about it in the business, I say the cliche thing, but it's true. It's like it represents what everybody's done. It wasn't really just about me. The award was based on transformational change and the growth of the business. So in like a short period, and I know we're going to get into it, but in a short period, the business went from strength to strength, but people got happier. And that was one of the measurements that led to the um, receiving of that award.
Well, congratulations. I think it's very
Thank you.
well deserved. So, for those that don't know you, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, your experience, and what you're currently doing?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's good to see you because obviously known each other for a while now. So I'm Matt Chapman. I am a mixed race, dual heritage man from Yorkshire, West Yorkshire, born in Bradford. Mother is Jamaican, dad is English, got some German heritage in there as well. I grew up in Bradford, playing rugby, didn't quite know where I was going, and ended up getting into university and studying law and criminology. From there, moved straight to London, said bye to my mum and my friends, and just set out, just trying to work out the ways through life and where it would take me. From there, I went into automotive, so working for BMW, and then into medias for the Guardian Media Group, and was working on what they called Guardian Jobs, which was very much newspaper, but something magic happened in that period, which was the newspapers shrank in size and readership because, and I'm showing my age here, there was the boom of the websites and the online, so the online advertising industry kind of was this like revolutionizing period, a bit like we're seeing with AI now, and I moved into the digital space. From there, though, I had a bit of a shocker and setback. They were asking for redundancies and they're asking people to volunteer. And at the same time, I was very fortunate to have an opportunity with Arsenal Football Club, which is a team that I support for my stresses and sins, why my hair's going at a rapid rate. But I worked for Arsenal for a few seasons, and it's at that point that I met and even heard. I met a guy who owned a business in FM, and I heard about facilities management as an industry because I hadn't realized what it really was at that point. And ironically, I was already working within it because I was working within the Emirates Stadium, making sure people were safe, having good experiences on match days, and everything that went within that property I was part of. So there was some transferable skills. It's just that I wasn't very aware of what that industry was. And I moved into FM and I haven't looked back. And I'm here today as chief exec of a soft facilities management company called SBFM, which means Sustainable Business Facilities Management. And we've been looking at the market, trying to bring it forward into a kind of future fit scale up model and doing things a bit differently, which is why we're one of the fastest FM growing companies in the UK and Ireland at the moment.
Amazing. Now, with SBFM, I mean, obviously you won that award for kind of like, business growth and all of that kind of stuff as well. Throw some numbers at us, Matt. Come on, tell us how much you managed to grow it by.
So yes, it's I'll do it by people because I always think like if we go by pounds, it sounds of just yeah, it's not. It takes away the reality. So when I joined, it was still a good performing company. There's about 1,800 employees, and the majority of which are frontline colleagues. So we're talking cleaners. Within 3 years, we grew to 8,000. So
Wow.
we're all doubling year on year. We're currently 8,300 frontline colleagues, and something just so creative when you talk about numbers, and this is an eye opener. We created a better connectivity with people who are applying for jobs and the natural attrition of our industry, which meant that we've amassed a network that we can utilize for providing soft facilities management of 50,000 people now. So
Wow.
that is 8,300 directly employed and 50,000 who've interacted with us, said that they want to work in our industry and are ready to pick up shifts for cleaning. And that network is forever growing, and we're proud
Wow.
of it.
Amazing. Now, I did read a report about the FM sector, and this was probably about 12 months ago, so it might be a little bit out of date, but like when talking about numbers of people and all that kind of stuff, but because of the increasing efficiency, use of robotics, AI, that kind of side of things, the FM companies may actually need 25% less employees within the next 5 years. Are you seeing that within your business at the moment?
Not yet. The notion in our industry and definitely in our business is more around the kind of robotics. So the machines that are coming in are actually still needing that human to push the button, and then they set going, and that person then goes and does other things. So what we're seeing is more of a change to the specification within the property, not a decrease in headcount yet. But I mean, for those who would have seen the some of the New Year's Eve celebrations across the world, you look in Japan and China and Dubai, and there's drones doing all these shapes and movements. And then there was just recently in Dubai an innovation conference, and we're not far from a robot being able to do all duties of cleaning, but we haven't seen the impact yet.
Or the
Not yet.
costs?
No, and well, this is it. The cost is high. I think as well, the other challenge is there's a lot of businesses and people in our industry who've actually seen that there's been so much pressure in reducing hours for cleaning and costs that actually the robotics that are coming in are trying to help now so that people can really clean, and I mean thoroughly clean a property within the set amount of hours using robots and their human interactions. So it's complementary. It hasn't replaced just yet.
Nice. Now, apart from the robots coming to take our jobs, what other kind of like trends have you seen within the FM sector over the past couple of years?
It's a really good question. So ultimately, there's just more behavioral insights. So traditionally, I think a lot of companies wouldn't exactly know who's in their property. There's always
Hmm.
been the notion that the frontline colleagues, the cleaning workforce, are invisible. And sometimes you don't notice that they're doing this magic. They're like the kind of magic elves or fairies within a building. Where the market's moved has been very much around proof of presence and proof of delivery. So over the last, let's say, 7 to 8 years, there's been a focus on showing that somebody has turned up, so they timestamp and have a GPS location. But the next iteration of this in the market is very much once someone is within the property, how fast are they moving? Are they covering all areas? Are there certain people who have been more productive or efficient than others? So that's where the market's moving. One of the key trends, though, is the economy, quite frankly, has been a challenge for most businesses. They're trying to offset some of these increases that we've seen, national insurance, most recently some changes to labour law provisions. There is a increase of clients asking for savings, and where can those savings come from? Because we can't really go lower than the national living wage, and we can't reduce any further, in some instances, the hours within a property. So what that's looking at is what you'd call the overhead charge, so the management of these people. And I think one of the trends and impacts that that's having for us is, can we now look at how connected we are to the workforce at the front line without the need of human interaction? And given that the one of the big challenges of the industry is languages, for instance, we have 143 nationalities working within our business and approximately 70 different languages. You're not going to get a multilingual area manager or operational manager. So how can we utilize technology so that people still can get the information they need to feel supported? That's one of the big upcoming trends. And therefore it's not that you're reducing the headcount, it's just that as the headcount expands underneath in the front line, there's more ways that people can understand what's expected of them, where they stand, if they have any issues, even down to how do you book your holiday. You can do that in a kind of automated way.
143 nationalities.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Do you just do like do you do a different food day every day of the year just for kind of like every single one of them?
Just
Like,
celebrated.
how do you
I
celebrate
wish.
that?
Well, I would explain some of my weight gain. But it's phenomenal. It's actually one of my favorite things in this industry. I'd say my top two are seeing amazing properties and going behind the scenes. Like, and the other thing is the makeup of all these different, a melting pot of all these different cultures, languages, experiences, and that each one of the 8,300 or the 50,000 is a human being with all the same things, got their own aspirations, goals, objectives, things that inspire them, ways of doing things. So it's a really, it's a challenge, but it's an exciting one. How I deal with it is I want everybody to have the same experience. It does not matter at our company if you are born in England or you've come into England and the UK, you get that same experience. You can still connect, you can still get paid on time, you still have the access to careers and career development as per any of our other colleagues. And you feel that you actually work for SBFM. And
Mm.
that's a big one because when you're out working in the properties, and there's quite a lot of people in leadership, I don't believe, go and witness how it feels at the front line. But a lot of the challenges that the colleague on the front line feels more connected to the building that they're working within and the brand they're working for than the company that's actually employing them. So one of my big objectives in our leadership team is to make sure that everybody feels connected and part of SBFM. It was the whole reason that we really changed our values to encompass that, so everyone's on the same wavelength.
Nice. Now with SBFM, one of the things I've kind of noticed is that like, you guys don't pitch for everything. You very much pitch for where you feel you can add value. I mean, that's something which is kind of like, come across kind of like really clearly. In terms of your sweet spot, or in terms of kind of like, where you guys find that you can add the most, which kind of contracts is that in? And geographically, what would you say your main areas?
Yeah, so we've actually built a platform, so it means that we can regulate and flex the workforce because we've got these data insights and everyone on the front line. So we truly believe and operate UK, Northern and Southern Ireland. So we're in every corner. We have national contracts from the likes of Pure Gym. So every single town and city where there's a Pure Gym, we are, every Cineworld. But we also have like flagship sites like Fortnum and Mason. So, we've got the single sites. So we think we're in all major cities, towns. Um, in terms of our sectors, you're absolutely right to pick up on the fact that we are choosy. We want to work with ideally up and coming sectors. So a lot of movement's been into logistics. Manufacturing's been on the boom, especially since the COVID period and things again moved further online. But we also have a fitting solution for retail because a lot of our outputs with the connectivity means that we can give a commercial efficient solution. And a lot of our retailers are pressures, and it's just about understanding them. So there's some that are looking at closed down strategy where they're almost consolidating their retail space and their real estate into places where footfall matters most, and they become their showrooms, you could say. And we can work with them to help that flex. But then when Christmas comes and it peak and footfall goes up, our platform enables them to be able to scale back up and be able to find more workforce should it be needed. So I'd say at the minute we are working across corporate, so the office space, retail, high street, and retail parks, logistics and manufacturing, and then what we are really kind of calling a broader one, leisure, hospitality, and entertainment. A big focus though strategically is public sector. We are working with about 4 clients out of our portfolio. That's a tiny percent. And we think actually for societal change, a lot of what we do is adding social value. And at the same time, we know that the government is looking for savings against their estate as well. So we think if we can get in there, we'll make a big difference and help UK Gov save some money.
Excellent. Love that. Now, your job role as a CEO changes a lot when you go from an 1,800 person business to an 8,000 person business. What keeps you motivated? How do you keep learning? How do you develop those skills to run a larger company on the job?
Really good question again. So, what keeps me motivated is the impacts that we're having on people. So, it's the same impact what we're doing for people who are 1,800. And I just love the fact that we're now broadening and enhancing that reach. So if you think when a frontline colleague comes into our business, if they're paid a national living wage on average, they're going to be looking to move on eventually. Cleaning's not for everybody. It's a very hard job, and there is not a lower salary other than the national minimum wage and the national living wage, which, by the way, let's say it as it is, the UK is saying actually it's below the real living wage, which is what you need to sustain life if you live in the UK. So we have jumped on the fact that we only have people for a short period of time potentially, because they've got the same aspirations of you and I. They want to provide for their families, they want to progress their careers, and want to hit their objectives. So what excites me is every time someone leaves our business, if we can give them a good experience, they're going to spread that word that there's a business here that's really invested in their careers, in their education, and they haven't tried to hold them back because they're really good at their jobs. If anything, they've celebrated the fact that they're good at their jobs and give them the best chance to move on. So in a sense, we're enabling our frontline colleagues to build CVs, to be so empowered and add investment in their education that they are ready to go on to the next challenge to provide for their own aspirations and their families. And there's not many companies that will do that, that will celebrate the attrition. What excites me is as we grow and keep proving out this model, there is more people that we can help improve their lives. And there's loads of people waiting to get into employment. So the cycle just keeps happening and it keeps fulfilling. And that's my most proud, I'd say, thing of what we're doing here at SBFM.
Nice. Now, I think I've probably known you now for about 12 years. And when I see you at networking events or I see you out and about, it's like I'll normally meet kind of like a couple of your team that are with you and all of this kind of stuff. And one thing that always strikes me is like, here's so and so. 3 years ago they were this, now they then they did this, then they did this. And you're very good at identifying talent and bringing it through and seeing that kind of like spark in people. What kind of like skill sets do you look for and what mindsets do you look for like when you're looking at who you're gonna, or do you just do this with everybody in the organization?
I think what's no, it's very kind, and I think you're the same. You can see the best or try and get. I think everyone's got the potential to be great, not just good. They've got the potential to be great. Got a brain, they've got hands, eyes, mouth. They just some people need the coaching. I think it's partly, I don't know, referred to it earlier, just on the values of the business. The things that I look for is essentially what we labeled our core values, which is the first value is be a good person. So
Mm,
kindness and someone who ultimately is going to do the right thing. That can be from being brought up properly to making the right decision. There's some people in the world, as we know, who you're thinking, are they a good person or not? So the first thing is that person a good person? They don't have to be like me, have the same interests, they don't need to support the same football club or be from the same background, but they need to ultimately have empathy, kindness, and be good. The second thing is, how do they interface with people? There are so many, and it's not just unique to FM, there's so many different roles and jigsaw pieces in the puzzle. They need to be able to connect and have chemistry with people that they're going to work with. They don't need to be their best friends, but they need to be respectful. So our second value is play as a team. The third one is my favorite, and this is one of the biggest things I do look for, which is think differently. We call it as a value, but it really means growth mindset. We want people who they're coming, they're going to run at their careers and they're seeing it not forever, it's for now. So they are running at their position. And I think if, again, whether it's someone in the office or frontline, if they are running at their position and they are developing, giving their all, there might become that time where they outgrow us and they need to move on. And that's great because we've had the best of them. The worst thing you can do is those people who actually, it's just a job. They don't really care. There's no connection to it. And they're not willing to put that extra mile in. And I'm not just talking, when I say extra mile, I'm not just talking about time. I'm talking about the quality, the thoroughness, the detail, the care. In that Think Differently as well, we love nothing more and of people who are daring to speak out and be a bit bolder. So the Think Differently is growth mindset, but it's also doing things that other people aren't prepared to and to call out. So in the market, as you know, I talk a lot. I've already talked about the fact that the national living wage that we and other FMs are paying is actually below the real living wage. And there's not many people who will actually speak about this real problem. Like I talk about attrition. people hide the fact because it's like murky and it makes our industry sound bad, but it's logical. Let's just say it. If people are paid so low, why would they stay? They'll go and work for Kentucky Fried Chicken if it pays more, or McDonald's if it gives more career opportunities. So why are we not addressing that? And the last thing is of the values is make an impact. I believe that some people need and haven't got, and it's something that I worry for my own children around resilience. I worry that things have been made too easy in society and access, be it even just they want to watch a program and they say, "Oh no, you've got your children to Netflix." They'd have to wait for the adverts to finish or the program to come on, and this culture of now generation means that there's a little bit of resilience. So some people want to go up the career ladder, but are not really seeing how much hard work on the likes of yourself, me, and a lot of other people in leadership roles have gone through to get there. So I look for those people. Actually, I'm willing to, it goes back to that same part, I'm willing to run at it and give it my all to develop. And then someone will notice that work and help me along that way. There's too many people, I think, who are not willing to make an impact. They just expect the outcome, and that's not reality.
I think that's really insightful. Then, in reflecting back on kind of like your own career now, what we kind of like see with lots of different kind of like leaders that kind of go into your type of CEO kind of position is that they normally have a position kind of like, somewhere in their earlier career where their trajectory's just changed, where they've kind of like decided, they've made a decision, they've learned something, something's kind of happened to them and it's acted as a catalyst for them for the rest of their career. Have you had any pivotal moments in your career that have really affected you?
Yeah, a few really. There's some that are a little bit murkier and darker than others, if that's okay to
No,
talk
totally.
openly about. There was a period where I thought I was up and coming, and I was on leadership groups, and I thought it was earmarked. The results were going my way, but there was a moment where I was the recipient of what I would say some racial discrimination. And it's quite a sensitive topic, but when I look back, I didn't feel I had a voice to challenge some of the things that actually was being said. And just to play it out for the any people listening to this, it was emails with images relating to race and images of this is Matt's mum and things that made me feel like I was the butt of the jokes. Now, why that was pivotal was firstly, it opened my eyes that if I'm like ultimately, I went to private school and educated, and I've got this support network. My father, albeit retired now, worked in employment law for ACAS. I was thinking, oh my gosh, there's so many vulnerable people out there probably going through something like this and don't have a forum or a support network to lean on to get them through it or know how to address it. Because I didn't speak up at the time. It was years later, like now, that I can talk about it. So that was like the first thing was right, actually, this isn't right. What can I do for people? The second one, which was pivotal, was when I kind of, I don't know, I'd say took the reins off, which is I already have talked about, I've worked in marketing and automotive, I worked in sports, media, but I started feeling like I was getting pigeonholed because I was very good with people, and business development sometimes has a connotation of sales. You see it in recruitment, it's sales, you're selling to me. But actually, no, you're understanding human interaction and you're doing needs analysis and you're looking at a lot of the challenges that people have and you're providing them a solution. And I felt that I was becoming underrated on my skill set than actually on my capability. And I had ambitions to be a chief exec. And when I got this role here, that was pivotal because it was a time where I hadn't done it before and I didn't know if I could do it. So imposter syndrome crept in. And the way I really managed it was I set out those values that I mentioned and principles that I want to live by, starting with being a good person. But I measured because I didn't know, and people say the phrase, it's lonely at the top. I had no one necessarily telling me if I'm doing a good or bad job. So I would do a survey every month to frontline colleagues and head office. And ultimately, I'm trying to gauge their happiness. And if I look at where Glassdoor as a rating was to where it is now, it was 2.7, it's now 4.2. When you were talking about numbers of that glow up and scale up that we've had, that is progression. And of our frontline colleagues, when I do the internal survey, they are over 4 stars out of 5. They're actually happier than people in the office, despite having the national living wage and the harder perceived job of, working out, cleaning toilets, cleaning properties that people don't even give you them the respect and gratitude at times. So they were the two pivotal moments. And I think my advice is these challenges that we come across, you've just got to use them, be it everyone may one day have that bad manager, but then they can take the things that they liked about that manager, because some managers that I would use to think were bad, they had so many good qualities. They had drive, they're great sales, they'd be able to really have a process. But there's some things I didn't like, and I think, okay, I'm not going to be like that person. I'm going to bring certain other elements into what makes up my way of doing things. So I think some people, you might have a bad experience, but use it to your advantage in the future.
Absolutely. Now, I don't want to make the whole interview kind of like about kind of like that incident that kind of happened to you with the photographs and the emails and all of that kind of stuff. But I mean, obviously, there'll be a lot of people out there who've never experienced racism and might think it's like, they're being funny or it's jovial or something like that. I guess firstly, could you just tell us what it felt like when, because you're a jovial person, you're an outgoing person, you're a friendly person. I imagine publicly you probably laughed it off kind of like, quite a lot, or kind of like, made yourself kind of part of the joke. But if you can share how it actually made you feel, that would be really, really, really good. And then I guess the second part is like, with the benefit of more experience, if there is anybody watching this who's going through something similar, how would you recommend that people address it if they are facing any type of kind of like, action at work which is making them feel uncomfortable?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So for context, one of them was a communication to a board, which was actually the email body was celebrating the fact that I'd been promoted to a director position. So imagine I'm there, I'm going, oh, there's an email here, and it's got the board on it saying congratulations to Matt. He's going to be promoted to a divisional sales director, I think it was at the time. Please, can everybody see the attached press release and give comment? So I'm sat at my desk and I click on the press release, and it's a image with a black cartoon face on and a slave speech bubble stereotype. And how that made me feel at the time was deflating. It actually was deflating, but that was insular. Externally, yeah, I laughed along. And I think that was for fear of, if I didn't laugh along and I was pushing against the machine, given that the whole board, or the majority of the board was on there, including HR was on there, then I would become the enemy of the state, and then I may get pushed out. Now, that was a really difficult thing, because if you can't turn to your HR and no one replied going, oh, this is out of order, where do you turn? And I think my advice would be, that's where you've got to go external network, where you've got to see your self-worth and be reminded of that and be checked. Because my brain was telling me this felt flat, but I still sucked it up and thought, actually, I still need a job and I want to work there. I think if this was happening again, I would probably, and imagine it's easier if HR is not on there because you can report it, and there's obviously employment law and protections in place. But I would want people to be bold enough to challenge and just educate, because the people who were doing it, the irony is, when I look back, they actually really liked me. They wanted my career to thrive. By my career thriving, it's a win-win. My career goes up. I bring more money for their business expands. And they actually supported me in many other ways. So I don't think they've truly understood the impact the email in that one example had. And I think my advice would be for the people, I'd go external, so then you get your support network. Don't just keep these things in. There's a lot right now about mindfulness and mental health, and people should talk about these things. But I also think people should feel reassured that if they don't just go and go, right, I'm going to sue, because that's what I didn't do. I didn't just try and sue. What they should do is try and educate and make people understand why that's not acceptable, how it made you feel. Because I think most people would go, actually, oh yeah, I get it. I'm sorry. So that would be my advice. Use your external network. And if you don't have an external network, there are charities, there's government functions like ACAS that you can turn to. There's obviously AI now as well, where you can you can tell your chat GPT that this is what's happening. It'll give you their pull from many data sources, but give you a solution should you need a skeletal solution. But I would try and speak to the person, as long as it's not any physical aggression, to try and make them understand why that's not. Because if you don't do that, like I didn't, that person could be going on doing it again to other people that I have no understanding. And you might actually save the experience of many other people in the future by speaking up. That's that whole use your platform. And I didn't then. I was probably inexperienced and I didn't feel empowered to do so. Now it would be a different me. And I want my children, should they go through anything like that, God forbid, I want my children that they would speak up at the time. They wouldn't swallow it from a period of 2013 to 2022. That's how long that never really got addressed or spoken about.
Wow. Now, in terms of representation of ethnic business leaders at senior level within FM, I mean, there's not much there, in terms of like, that kind of side of things. And as you know, we do a lot of work within the DEI space and all of that kind of stuff as well. So trust me, we have looked, there's not a lot of representation. Like, there is a lot of representation, however, at the front line, So
Yeah.
what steps do you think organizations and companies can be taking to kind of like try to start to funnel that through so that there is more development opportunities for people?
Such a good and easy observation, firstly. So you're absolutely right. The profile of the front line is, in our business, is probably over 80% non-white, non-British. Okay, so people from all different ethnicities and cultures and backgrounds. And then it skews. So the FM industry has actually been getting away with it for years, because when they do the reporting or any figures, we're the most diverse industry in the world. We're, EDI is top of our agenda because look, we've got 80% people who are not white British. But then when you get into the detail, that's, as you've just identified, as people on the front line, the head office skews the other way, where you're probably going to get 10% who are not white, not British. And the way I think you counteract it is very much like a sports mindset. If you see your front line as your academy and you actually get to know who they are, because they're humans, many of which have come to this country with ambitions of grandeur and, they're bilingual. If you're bilingual, I'm not bilingual. If you're bilingual, your brain's working, you're translating things into another language. You've got a level of education that's probably on average higher than a lot of people in the UK. No offense to us in the UK, but that I can't back it up with a science, but my logic tells me you're pretty clever. And then when you get to know them, you find out some of these people who come in are leaving some atrocities, be it, things like with, obviously, be it, I don't know, Eastern European Ukraine, to people leaving parts of Africa, or India or Bangladesh, trying to further their lives, develop their careers. And some of them are actually already educated. They've got degrees, or they've done the equivalent of the A levels, albeit in other countries, or they play the piano and they've got these skill sets. We found two doctors and a lawyer working in our frontline colleagues pool. They just came to our country, they couldn't get into the NHS, or their qualifications weren't perceived in the same way that if they were educated in the UK. So if we see that frontline colleague pool as an academy, a football academy, then naturally we should be trying to get people graduating, if that's what we're saying, into these head office positions. And a lot of these sports centres, that is their target, is to make people progress. And they set themselves targets. They're investing in the youth, we invest in our front line, we put our education in, and we set ourselves targets that our front line are moving into management positions such as area managers, account managers, and hopefully some of those head office positions. And then we measure it. The other thing I think that people need to look at is, what is their leadership group? So our board, trying to get our board to be representative of society and our frontline colleagues, so that people can go, I can make it. In the same way, when Barack Obama became president, that hadn't happened before. And that made people like me go, oh my gosh, look, there's someone who I can identify with in a leadership role, who's speaking articulate, has got a brain, looks like a kind guy, and giving a good account of himself. That inspires. So our board here is a mixture. We're actually 65%, 65, 70% female. which is against our industry, very male dominated. There's myself as chief exec. The guy who founded the business is a very young man. We also have on the board someone who used to be a cleaner who works in HR and the people provision as our CPO, has worked in a mental health institute as an agency cleaner. So they've lived and breathed some of the challenges and didn't go to university. We equally have a chief operating officer who went to Cambridge University and has been a transformation consultant in engineering. And bringing all these people together, I'd say the common thread is they all want to do right by society. They've all had personal challenges. So some of these stories, I just mentioned one who's been to Cambridge and one who hasn't. Both have had, I guess, life-changing experiences that really drives them on and spurs them to be A, resilient, and B, ambitious for goals. And they want to do right by people. And that then has meant that we've created a inspirational, I believe, board where everybody in our workforce can identify with and interact with and be inspired by.
Excellent. Now, that second to last question, in terms of like your long-term vision for the business, is this global domination?
I would love for the business to move into other markets and regions. And, we've caught up, and just like your business has in different regions, because the approach is very human-centric. So therefore it can transcend a lot of these regional barriers that we have and geographical codes. So our tech that helps people engage and communicate and how we treat people, it can be the same if it's in US or if it's in UAE. It doesn't just have to be for the UK and Ireland. So an ambition of ours is to expand there. The other goal is if we can keep almost having these two platforms, we have our workforce, but we have our flex network, we can turn them in from passive networkers to active, as in how can we train people who don't have jobs now to be ready so that when the inevitable happens, that attrition I mentioned or the absenteeism in the industry, these people in the flex pool are active and ready to step up. And that will help UK Gov, offset some of the costs that they have getting people into employment, but will also mean that we have a better service delivery of infused, motivated workforce of people who want to do a good job because they want to further their careers. Therefore, we'll have happier clients because the clients are going to get a better output because we're fulfilling shifts. And also we'll have a better commercial cost base because if we have all this information on the detail of our people, then we don't need as many people driving around in vans and the management positions, which is one of the big costs. And that management is shrinking. We can manage using our technology and our AI tools and automate some of those processes.
Nice. And if you were starting out your career again within the FM industry just now, I mean, you moved into it kind of like obviously kind of like sequentially, but what advice would you give to others in terms of like, advancing their careers quickly?
The advice I would give is connection to the business you're serving, so understand their purpose and find your belonging, because that will come through in your behaviors. If you don't believe in the product or the business, you've got a problem there. And I was very lucky. I mentioned Guardian, BMW, Arsenal. These are all all the companies I've worked in, I actually believed in what they were setting out to achieve. The other part I would say is the bit I mentioned earlier about my children is resilience. Understand that there's going to be some bumps. You're not going to get every promotion. Your company's not always going to come and go, hey, you know what? You did a good job last week. Here's a pay rise. So you're going to have resilience and patience, but don't change your authentic self. And when I look back, and I've stacked shelves in Morrison's as a kid, I look back, I was the same person. I was still working hard in that environment. So I would say keep consistent on your output so that you are giving the best account of yourself at all stages, even when you become the chief exec or whatever position you go into, still be that same person, authentic, hardworking, resilient, and kind. I think that's what I would say.
I love the kindness, be good. You know, I love the values kind of like with the company, Matt, and I think it's a really good testimony to yourself that you've
Thank
managed to
you.
grow it kind of like so much. So I think we'll do one of these interviews again in 2 years' time when you're 20,000 people and see kind of, you know, see how you're getting along at that point. And I have no doubt you'll get there, mate, 100%.
I hope so. I hope so, because I think it's spreading a good message by doing so with the growth. So fingers crossed.
Fingers
Thank you.
crossed, absolutely. Brilliant. Thanks for taking the time, Matt. Really appreciate it.
Brilliant. Thank you.